Welcome to our 25th tutorial on Erlang. Today we're going to build a website using Erlang and Chicago Boss web framework. So today's tutorial we're going to focus on installing Chicago Boss web framework. The first thing we need to do is to install and download Chicago Boss. I'm going to put the URL to a link below. So what we do now is just download. In today's tutorial I'm going to focus on the Windows installation, which tends to be the most difficult one to do, and if you have Linux it's straightforward to install. So once you have it downloaded, we have to extract it. Once the Chicago Boss has been extracted, we'll get the Chicago Boss folder. Inside the folder we're going to have a series of files, and what we're most interested in would be the rebar batch file and the Windows make batch file. The Windows make batch file is simply the make file, but it's specifically for the Windows operating system. So the next step is to simply hold on the Shift key button and right click the folder and then open the command in that location, so we don't have to change directory. The next step is simply to call rebar and compile it by calling the compile function, and we just wait for rebar to compile. And after that, the next step is basically to call Windows-make. We can call Windows-make all or Windows-make. They're both the same thing. Shouldn't take too long now. And when that is done, the next step is to create our project folder. For the purpose of this tutorial, I want to make a demo application, a demo website. We're going to call it Hello World. So what we do is we simply call Windows-make, and we call the app, and we name our project equals Hello World and enter. Now the folder should be created and some modules should be part of the folder. So if we go back to the download location, we should see an Hello World folder which contains our Hello World project. Right here, what we're mostly interested in is the rebar, the start server to start the actual server. We have the source folder here, and knowing Chicago Boss is an Erlang web framework built around MVC, which basically stands for Model View Controller, we can see the folders here, which this is the controller, and this is the view, which contains the HTML files, everything like that, and we have the model, which contains models like object and things like that, and the controller, like I said before, which contains the Erlang files, and we also have the Hello World AP source file. And the first thing we have to do is obviously to start the server, and then the code would run with the local host. But before that, what we want to make sure of is the boss config file to make sure everything is okay, because this usually throws a lot of errors if it's not correctly set. And the major error is always in the path. If you look at the Chicago Boss folder we have Chicago Boss -0.8.7, and right here in the config file we have 0.8. So without the 7, the application is going to crash. So let's just test and see how it works. So if we go back to the Hello World folder, so change directory, cd -- and cd Hello World, and for example, if I start the server, let's see what happens. We get nothing really, because it's the path is incorrect. Now let's see what happens when we fix the server path, I mean. So 0.7, save, and now let's call start server again, and now we get this information and the server is running. And to test this, we simply open our web browser. So in the URL we type and we specify the port is 001 and enter, and now we should get no route match the requested URL, which is the correct information which we should get. And as you can see this sign above, which means Chicago bus server is running. The next part of this tutorial is to actually develop the web application using the MVC model. So if we go into the source folder, the first thing we want to do is to create a view. The view is going to contain, first of all, a base file which is going to make all our web pages look similar, and then we're going to make separate HTML file for other web functions and web pages. But first of all, let's write the base. So once we have it open, the first thing we do is to create a new file, and we want to save as. If we go to the location of this file, perfect. Just go to the location. The first thing we do is to save the base file as base.html. Now that we have the base file, everything is similar to our typical HTML file. So first thing is the doc type on HTML. Next we want to write the HTML tag, close the tag. Then we want to write the head. In the head we want to write in the title, and we're just going to call it base title. The next part is to write the body. So let's just tidy this up a little bit, not to make our code rough. So nice. And in the body we want to write a block of body which all our other HTML pages is going to modify to suit their needs. So this is going to be the beginning of the block. Anyone that has used MVC will be used to this sort of coding. So we're going to call it the block and label it as the block, and then we're going to end the block. So percentage and end block. So all these parts will be unique to individual pages, while the other parts is going to be common amongst all other pages. And finally, let's put some tags in there, and let's just say UX learner IT Carlo, something like that. I don't know, copyright something, and we just save it. Now we have our base HTML file. The next is to let's create a folder for the controller. Our first controller is going to be index controller. So index, and in the index controller we're going to have a function called index as well, which is going to be our main page. So file, new file, save as. Let's just go back to the source, and actually I don't need to move. So index, we're going to save this as index.html. So this is going to represent our index function that's going to be in the controller, which we're going to talk about later on. So in the index HTML file, we want to first extend to the base, so percentage and extends, and then we're going to call the name of our base file. So it's going to be base.html. And now we're going to create our block. So here is going to be the block that's unique to this HTML, that is unique to this index.html file. So the block is going to be block, and we're going to call it the block, and same tag as before, percentage end block. And right here we're going to have some HTML code. So h1 and below that we're going to have the LO. So we're going to put another block. First of all, strong, and in here we're going to put the tag that we're going to use in the controller, and the name of the tag is going to be LO, and you see this later on when I'm coding the controller. So we save the index.html file. When we see this in the browser, we're going to see home, and we're going to see the message that contained in the LO tag here, and then we're going to have the end block. So we save it. Now it's time to proceed to the controller. So we're going to create another new file, and this time it's going to be an Erlang file. So we're going to save it as we go back to the source folder, the controller folder. Here there's a typical layout to the web framework, the Chicago Bus web framework. The first part of the controller name is going to be the name of the project, which in our case will be LO World, and then underscore, followed by the name of the controller, which is going to be index. This is going to be necessary for later on. And the final part is going to be the controller itself. .erl. After saving the file, the next step is to code the functions in the Hello World index controller. So we start like a normal Erlang file by creating the module, so by calling module, and we're going to specify the name of the module, which is Hello World underscore index underscore controller, and you have to specify another argument, which is going to be the request, REQ. The next part is to export the function that we have. So we're going to have export, and we're going to have a list of functions to export, which we're going to do later on after writing the function itself. The first function we want is the index function, which is going to be the actual main page itself, the home page, and it takes two arguments. The first one is the get method, which you can have when you're dealing with web application. You can have a get or a post, and a list of other arguments. So basically this area is for if you want to, as part of the get method, you want to send in like a name, username or password. You can put it through the get method or post, and I might show that in later tutorial, but not with this tutorial because I want to make things very basic. The next part is the returning value. So we want to return a tuple that's OK, and we want to have a list that contains another tuple. So here we're going to specify the identifier which we have in the index.html, and it's called hello. So we're going to put it here, and then the message. So it's going to be hello world. So that is finished, and save. Oh, before we finish it, we have to export the function, which is going to be index, and it takes in two arguments. So save. In future tutorials I'll be using IntelliJ IDE, so just for this because it's nice and basic. Anyway, once it's saved, we go back to our folder, we click on shift and right click and call open command window here. So now what we have to do is basically compile the file and start the server. So we call rebar compile, and hopefully everything should go according to plan. And we're going to call start server. And we should get this screen and the Erlang shell running. So when this server started, we just have to open our web browser, and we're going to go to the local host, port 8001, and we should get the normal no route match the URL. But now we're just going to navigate to the controller, which is called index, and the folder index, and the function index. So we have home hello world, so like we have here. And if we look at source code, so right click and view page source, we have home strong hello world EX Learner IT Carlo. Another thing I would like to show is a way of modifying the hello world route. So just drop this here, and basically I want the route to automatically be the index page. So right here in the front page, we can just change the code. So this is going to be the root, and the controller we want is the index controller. So if we look at the naming conversion, hello world underscore index underscore controller. So index is the name of the controller, and then the action is going to be the index action, which is the function here, index, that's going to get called every time we get to the root. So we save, we compile. Well, you don't really have to compile, but it's better to compile. And we start the server. First of all, we quit the current server we're on, just to be 100%. So you can quit, but usually everything just refreshes. But if you want to do it the full way, you can quit, and we can just start the server again, and it's running again. So I'm just doing it the long way. And now we go back to the local host again and port 8001, and now we should have the default page, home hello world UX Learner IT Carlo. Hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial, and hopefully in the next tutorial I'll make things a little bit more advanced. See you then.